Hello, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video, which is the Books and Life tag. And I was tagged by Olive over at a Book Olive to do this, and I am so jazzed, but it still blows my mind that Olive knows I exist, that Olive knows my channel exists, because I have been watching her videos for years and it still feels like a pinch me moment. So I was really jazzed about this tag, but why don't we just dive right in? Okay, so to start off, I think this is one of the most interesting and unique tags that I have seen. These questions are so fascinating to me, and I will put the original creator's information in the description box for you as well, along with Olive's information. But hopefully you enjoy my answers and the questions as much as I do. So the first question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a normal person and 10 being the late Harold Bloom, how much are books and reading a part of your life? I would say that books and reading are probably a 6. I have always tried to maintain like a good balance with anything that I am really passionate about, because I know how easy it is to experience burnout when you're all in and you're at that level 10. And that's coming from having experienced that at one point in my life, that I was so burned out in reading that I really basically had a 2-year-long reading slump where I would pick up books, but I ended up DNFing almost all of them within 50 to 60 pages. I couldn't focus on them. I wasn't in a good headspace, and that was because I had graduated from college, gone into book publishing, and I spent all of my spare time trying to read for work, where you're reading unpublished manuscripts, trying to decide whether they're books that your agent should pursue and try to sell to publishing houses, having to write reports on them. Like, my entire weekend would be spent reading a manuscript and writing like a book report on it, and then also talking books constantly because all of my friends, everyone that I worked with, books were it, and trying to read on my own time, and it became too much and I experienced burnout. So now, even with my channel, I do try to leave room for other things that I am passionate about. I try to make sure I have time to watch TV and to watch movies, because as much as a book nerd as I am also a cinephile. I love movies and I love theater. And so I try to make sure I have time for that. I try to make sure I have time to bake. I love baking bread and baking pastries, and those are really labor-intensive things. I also try to make sure I have time to spend with my friends and my family. So I really have made like a conscientious effort to schedule in time for books that don't interfere with those things, which is part of why I am a morning reader, because I will start reading at 5:30 in the morning, and then I will finish at maybe 7:30, 8, and that'll be all I read for that day, with the exception of like if I have an audiobook because I'm doing chores or I'm at work doing like admin things where I can actually listen to something and try to retain something. So even with this channel and the amount of time that I spend filming, editing, coming up with ideas for videos, I would say that I am at a 6. And that is a really long answer, but hopefully that makes sense. Question 2. Where does your personal library stand right now in relation to the rest of your life? Do you have more books now than you ever have? Fewer? How has your library changed? So for me, I definitely have more books than I ever have. And I'm okay with that. Like, that doesn't bother me, because I feel like I'm also reading more now than I ever have. And so I know that the books that are coming in, I'm reading enough to like have a reasonable output as well. Not equal, but reasonable. And so I don't feel bad about that. Also, the fact that I've begun to buy more books secondhand, that I'm really focusing on supporting independent bookstores. Like, it makes me feel better about buying books whenever I have those moments where I'm like, ooh, I have a lot on that physical TBR, don't I? But yeah, I'm okay with the number of books I have, even if it's more than I've ever had. As for like my reading habits, I really don't think they've changed all that much. Like, I do know what I enjoy, and I tend to be a creature of habit, so I know that I really like nonfiction history books, and I know that I really love historical fiction. I know I really enjoy modern classics and classics. The only thing that has probably changed in the last year or so is that I'm really open to romance as a genre, whereas I haven't been in the past, and I'm really exploring that. I've read a decent number of like contemporary romances that I've really enjoyed. I've recently started getting into more of the historical romances, and I've had some there that I've really enjoyed as well. So I would say that's probably the only thing that has really changed about my personal library. That, and now I also listen to audiobooks, which that was like a revelation last year when I discovered the Libby app. But yeah, I don't think I've changed. I am very much a creature of habit. Okay. Question 3. Take a mental step back and ask yourself, what is the most likely first bookish impression a newcomer would have in your home? I would say that the first impression would be that her books are all over the place, and how can she find anything? And it is true, I have books literally all over the place. So I have 2 bookcases like this one here, and one over there. I have the book graveyard, which are all the books that I unhaul during a quarter that are just kind of lined up on a wall over there. I have books in piles on the floor in various places. I have books kind of tucked into different nooks and crannies because I just don't have enough shelf space. And as you can see, like, I've had to like put books in front of books. Like, it's a mess. It's chaos. But the fact of the matter is that I do actually have a system in place. So I am able to find what I'm looking for. So the bookcase that I actually film in front of is my fiction bookcase. And way at the top row is my classics collection, and then beneath it I have my modern classics, and then everything else is like all of my other fiction. And I do try to do it alphabetically, but it's not perfect because I do have the double up situation, and I tend to bring in more books than I like output, I guess. That does not feel like proper English, but you know what I mean. And then the other bookcase that I have over there is my nonfiction bookcase, and up on the top I have like my travel guides from all of my solo European adventures thus far, along with plays and like poetry. I have a few poetry books. It's like 3, so it's not much. And then everything else beneath it is just all of my other nonfiction, and it is in semi-alphabetical order. And then I do have like one shelf over there that is just like reference stuff. So I have books on writing, like dialogue, on symbolism, on character development. I have like thesaurus, dictionaries for other languages, that sort of thing. But there is a system, and for the most part, the books that are in random like places, they're either books I'm unhauling, or they're the most recent books that I just haven't been able to find a spot on the shelf. So yeah, they would probably think that I am a book hoarder, and that I am chaotic and a mess, and some of that is true, but also I do actually have a system in place. They would probably just be overwhelmed by the number of books that they see upon walking into this room. So, question 4. How often, if ever, do you clean or reorganize your books? So, as far as reorganizing goes, I don't reorganize often because it is a big undertaking. And I do have a system that works and has worked for years, so I'm kind of the opinion, if it ain't baroque, don't fix it. This works for me, and until I have like more room and more space for myself, like this organizational thing that I have going on, it's fine, it works. As for cleaning out the books, though, over the course of the last year, I've been experimenting with doing these like quarterly book unhauls because I'm kind of mirroring what I do with my wardrobe, because for the last few years I've been like living with a capsule wardrobe, and so at the end of every season I kind of do an assessment of my closet, get rid of things that I'm not wearing anymore that don't fit me, etc. So I've kind of applied those same ideas to my book collection, where I go through and I get rid of books that I read and didn't enjoy, books that I don't think I'm going to read again, and also books that are just collecting dust that odds are I will never get around to reading because like my interest in them has probably come and gone by this point because they've been sitting on my bookshelf for years, like literal years. So I do this quarterly. And it's not a case of that I necessarily get rid of a ton of books. It's probably, I want to say it's probably 20 to 25 each time I do it, which I guess is quite a number of books. By the end of the year, that's nearly 100 books that I've unhauled. But I do find that that helps me to kind of keep the chaos at bay, because I am always buying new books. So this way I kind of sort of make room for the ones that I'm bringing in. It's not a perfect system because I do buy more books that I end up getting rid of, but it makes me feel a little better. It makes me feel like I'm not crowding myself out of my own space with books, although I don't really have a problem with that, truth be told. So yeah, I don't reorganize often. I think really the only time I would reorganize is like if I were moving or like got more shelf space or something like that. But as for cleaning, I do unhaul books on a quarterly basis right now, and I do like go and dust my shelves and the books and that sort of thing, but I don't really have to worry much about that. Like I make sure it's not super dusty, but I don't have to worry about like water damage or mildew or anything like that. The only books that are really protected are my like antiquarian books, which I try to make sure that they aren't getting a ton of direct sunlight because I don't want like their covers to fade or anything like that. But yeah, that answers that. Question 5. On average, how many books do you acquire in a given week? This is tricky because there are plenty of weeks when I don't buy any books. So giving like an average for the number of books weekly, if I had to, I would probably say 1 to 2, but I think what would be more accurate for me is like a monthly average, because I tend to be one of those people who will go to a bookstore or go to an online website and I will buy a lot of books at once, and then I kind of cut myself off and I'm like, okay, I'm not buying any more books for the rest of the month. Like that's that's basically as long of a book ban as I can manage. And so if you like look at that, it's probably 8 to 10 books a month, with some exception where certain months I don't buy anywhere near as many books, or other months where I buy even more books than that. But I would say, yeah, the average would be 1 to 2 books a week, but more realistically, 8 to 10 books a month. I don't know if that math makes sense. I'm not a math person, but that's the answer we're going with. Question 6. What song is your current earworm? And this is the most random question to have in the middle of this tag, but I like it. I like it a lot. My taste in music is pretty eclectic. I'm really all over the place, truth be told. Like the only thing that I can say that I don't listen to is country music. Everything else is fair game. I at least listen to a couple songs in every other genre, but country music, no. If I had to pick like my current earworm, it would probably be Song of a Preacher Man by Dusty Springfield, because that song has been playing in my head for years since I discovered it. Like I love it. It's just a lot of fun. It's a little like folksy, maybe, I don't know, but it's constantly in my head. There's also another song of hers, 24 Hours from Tulsa, I think. That one is also constantly like on loop in my head. So yeah, those two. And also recently I've just been re-listening to the Mamma Mia and Mamma Mia 2 soundtracks constantly. So can you have a whole album as an earworm, or 2 albums as earworms? Because that would be the answer to that. Next question. What percentage of your self-control do you retain in a well-stocked bookstore? None. 0. I have no self-control when I go into a bookstore. I can honestly say that I don't think I have ever walked into a bookstore and come out empty-handed. There will always be books that come home with me. I have no control. There's always something that I can find. It's funny too, because when I go into bookstores, I'm not one of those people who can like put things into a cart or their basket and like then look at the pile, assess it, and like put books back. No. If the book ends up in my arms, it is coming home with me. It is now mine. So I am not one of those people that can put back books and say I will buy it later. They all have to come home with me now, and that's the end of that. But yeah, I have 0 self-control in a well-stocked bookstore because, to be honest, because I like classics and modern classics, even in like smaller like used bookstores, I can always find something like that I want to bring home with me that I haven't read yet. And yeah, it's bad. Like 0 shelf control. 0. It's a flaw. I understand that about myself, but it's a flaw that I'm okay with. Question 8. Do you ever feel the need to take a break from books? If so, what form does it take? And I already alluded to this earlier. There was like a 2-year period when I really did not read for pleasure because I had burned myself out from having worked in book publishing. And during that time period, I would attempt to read books and just couldn't like immerse myself in them. I ended up DNFing, or like just unintentionally putting a book down and not picking it up again many times. But it was just a period when books and I were just not getting along. Like I needed space from them. And so during that time period, I kind of went towards my other hobbies. I have these other pursuits. I'm really into film and movies, so I watched a lot of those. I watched a lot of TV. I hung out with my friends. I got into baking. Like I found other outlets for myself during that time period. But I do think that's partly because of the like balance I've tried to achieve in my life, where yes, books are a passion of mine. I love reading, but there are other things that I'm equally passionate about, and so I've always had those to fall back on and always have had time to do those things. Nowadays, like, I am a huge proponent of don't force yourself to read if you're not in the mood to read. So there will be times, like, during my like set aside scheduled reading time in the morning that maybe I didn't sleep well, or work was a bitch the day before, or I just have stuff on my mind where I'm just like, you know what? I'm not gonna read this morning. I'm gonna watch YouTube, or I'm gonna watch an episode of some stupid TV show on Hulu, Netflix, BritBox, whatever the case may be, or maybe I'll pop in a movie. Like there are plenty of mornings where that's just what I do because I don't feel like reading, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, I never want to force myself to read something because it's not a case of that I'm being graded anymore. Like, it's not my schoolwork, my grades, my GPA don't depend on it. It's not my work, so my salary and my like income don't depend on it. It's something that I do for fun, and so it shouldn't be stressful. Even with this booktube channel, like, I don't stress out about it. I read what I want to read. I read how much as I can or I want to in a given month, which is why some months I read more and some months I read fewer. But for me, I just fall back on those hobbies that I also enjoy, those other things that I'm really passionate about whenever I need to take a break from books. At this point, like, a break from books for me is like a day or two maybe. I tend to not actually read a lot on the weekends because life and everything else, but that's probably really as long of a break as I would take now from books, a couple of days, because I have other stuff going on. So yes, this is another really long-winded answer for this question, but there you go. So the camera battery died. We're all good. We're moving on to question 9. And that question is, when you meet a new person, how long does it take you to bring up books? And I really think that it's situational. Like, when I worked in book publishing, it came up almost automatically. When I was in school, it also came up automatically. But I do try my best to gauge a person's interest before I, like, unload my bookish love and worship, essentially, because there's nothing worse than you, like, gushing effusively about a book or books in general, and the person you're talking to is staring blankly at you, eyes glazed over, and just kind of nodding and placating you that way because they have zero interest. Like, it is such a buzzkill. It's not fun. So I do try to avoid those situations, and I mean, there's always so much else that I am interested in. I think at this point, I'm more likely to ask a person, like, what TV shows they're watching on Netflix or what they do for work. But yeah, I do think for me it's situational. If I'm in a situation and a setting and an environment that encourages my asking of books, it's probably the first thing I do. But if not, it's probably a little bit down the road as far as, like, interrogating the person about their life. Question 10. Have you given any thought / made any provisions for your personal library after you croak? The answer is no. I am 31 years old, and although we've been living through a pandemic, I am hoping that I have a long life ahead of me, and so I haven't made provisions for anything in my life at this point. I have, like, jokingly told friends of mine who are also, like, really into books, like, oh yeah, you can have my book collection and that sort of thing, but it's not like I've had any serious thoughts about it. I would hope that, like, if I did croak, that my books would go to friends and family members who have gone through the books and selected what they want to read. Otherwise, I would hope that they are donated or given to, like, a secondhand bookshop or something like that. But I haven't made any provisions, haven't really seriously thought about it. Don't think it's something that's in the cards for me to really think about anytime soon, but this question on this tag certainly has me thinking about it. But yeah, it's like, my mortality is not something I try to dwell on. I know the only certainty in life is death, which is a very morbid expression, but I'm hoping that I don't croak for years and years to come so that I can read all the books that I currently have and then some. But yeah, I have not made provisions. The last question: are you known among your friends and loved ones for your weird and probably unhealthy relationship with books? Absolutely. I don't think any booktuber could honestly say that they weren't. So I have always been this way. I have always loved books. I was a bookworm as a kid, and my family supported me. It wasn't uncommon It wasn't uncommon for me to curl up in a chair or on my bed and read a book in one sitting. It wasn't uncommon for me to read books well above my supposed reading level. I always got excited about trips to the library or to the bookstore. I talked about books all the time. I went to school, studied English, literature. I went into book publishing. Like, people just know this about me. And my coworkers know this about me too, because this tends to be my backdrop when I'm on conference calls. And so the biggest thing in the screen are my books, and that always brings up questions, and people know that I just love books. They're always impressed by the number of books that I read, although I don't think I read that much, because I certainly know other booktubers and bibliophiles who read far more than me, but it always impresses people. The fact that I do this booktube channel, like, my mother has supported me from day one, but the other members of my family who knew about it from the start thought it was weird, thought it was like a passing, like, thing that I would do, and then I'd just kind of get bored. But now I've done it for a year, and so my family takes it more seriously. But it's a case of, like, books have always been really important to me. And so my friends and loved ones, those people who know me at my quirkiest, just know that this is one of my, like, many quirks, that I love reading and can talk about books constantly, and am happy to do so. So yeah, I am that person. I am that person with the probably unhealthy relationship with books in my family and friend groups, but I do think it's helpful that a lot of my close friends are also book people. Like, a few of them are writers. Most of us actually met while working in book publishing, although only, I think, one of us is still in book publishing at this point. But yeah, it is what it is. I embrace the fact that I am a bookworm. I am proud of it. I am passionate about it, and yeah. So yeah, those are my answers to the questions in the books and life tag. I hope you found them enjoyable, but I guess now's the time that I tag people, so I'm going to tag Milena from over at Milena's Library, Katie from over at Katie Reads and Rants, and Emma from over at the Overstuffed Shelf. But if you do not know their channels, go check them out and subscribe for sure. Anyway, I really do hope you enjoyed this tag video, and if you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!